On October 6, 2017, a game was released that would take the world of content creation by storm. Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. The unintuitive mechanics and strange design of the game was so appealing, not just for its creativity, but for its overwhelming difficulty. Most of the millions of players who gave the game a shot probably never completed the game, let alone made it far enough to experience every obstacle that it had to offer. Getting Over It's booming success inspired many other developers to try and create similar experiences. Games like Jump King, Pogo Stuck, Alt F4, and most recently, Only Up. While Only Up may not be as well made as some of these other games, it definitely has the creativity and the hype. With millions of views across all platforms, it is currently the most popular title in this very niche genre of gaming. From the small bunch of big content creators in the world to the many medium and small-sized creators, everyone is trying this game out. Streaming it, making YouTube content, highlight reels, clip compilations, and one of the more popular things to witness, speedruns. That's what I'm here to talk about. Allow me to dive into what kickstarted the hype of this game, show how well it transitioned into the spotlight of the speedrun community, and explain how the run has developed. For those of you who aren't quite sure how this game even came to be, it's a seemingly simple concept. The developer wanted to create a game that loosely follows the tale of Jack and the Beanstalk, but based on a kid who dreams of ascending mountains of random objects and obstacles to escape his life in the favelas. It sounds weird because it is weird. It's really weird. Anyways, the game released on Steam on May 24th after a few updates and a trailer was shown on the Steam page weeks before. The game consists of these random floating objects and obstacles which vary from common things like food, books, cars, furniture, to very uncommon things, like massive gold bars, planets, a huge statue of Jesus, a giant skeleton, and a dragon. It truly is just an absolute ton of assets of just about everything you can think of, stacked in a particular way that allows you to climb it all to the top using the following mechanics: walking, sprinting, crouching, rolling, climbing, and a slow-mo ability to help with important or risky jumps. As mentioned before, the creativity is what makes it shine, but this game is a jank mess when it comes to the basic mechanics I just listed. Most people viewed the jank as adding to the difficulty, and this is what has ultimately drawn millions of people to watch content creators attempt the maddening challenge. An uprising of viewership all started shortly after release, when only a handful of people were posting about the game's difficulty and ridiculous themes. It was particularly popular in the eastern part of the world, as a Chinese player by the name of Yan Yi was supposedly the first person to ever complete the game on May 25th. Upon this completion, Yan Yi decided to take a crack at completing it as fast as possible, out of boredom, finishing with a time of 49 minutes and 30 seconds. Which was truly impressive for being the first run. Yan Yi was an inspirational start to this game's speedrunning history. The 4930 was uploaded to YouTube under the channel IW Rainfall, and it showcased a pretty good understanding of the game, as well as a few shortcuts via the beds. Of course, there were many more strats to incorporate as they learned about more shortcuts, and the next run they uploaded was a 37 flat on the 29th of May. Clearly, they had a better understanding of the jumps and climbs that they could get away with, as well as a lot more confidence in their ability to run through certain areas faster. There were also a couple of added bed jumps and a slight reroute to finish the game's first section by taking a different path. The very next day, Yan Yi uploaded a 3052 to the same YouTube channel. French runners noticed this accomplishment, and Nesuxley completed the game on May 30th. Ms. Huxley encouraged others to take a crack at it, so both W. Radion and Tony WS beat the game, and completed speedruns on the 31st. This snowball effect helped the game gain some traction on Bilibili, YouTube, and Twitch, which sent this snowball flying through the snow, making a huge impact in the content creation world. Very popular creators took the game from being a niche challenge to the game that quite literally everyone had to watch or play. Only Up has everyone's attention, and while a lot of people were watching their favorite creators tackling their first attempts, there were thousands of people also interested in watching just how fast someone could complete it. At this point, plenty of Chinese and French members of the speedrunning community were hard at work, and the French runners W. Radion and Blywark started the official speedrun.com leaderboard. Yan Yi's runs are where it all began, so I'm going to briefly break down the game using his 30-minute completion. To start this off, I want to mention that this run is sectioned up into 5 different key areas, all separated by elevators or platforms or just some type of transportation. I'm not sure if there are official names for these, but I'm just going to name them the way that I interpret them. In order, they are the city, the heavens, the mythos, the beanstalk, and space. Let's begin. Only Up starts you off in the favelas, and has a few options of reaching the first odd obstacle in the sky. In this run, Yan Yi takes the elevator up to the pipes. Despite being the first obstacle in the game, the pipes can be very tricky to master, and sprinting across them is extremely risky. As you can see here, the spiral section is taken pretty slowly to avoid falling. After some short platforming, there is a small bed jump performed to get to the train platform. From here, Yan Yi climbs the section normally, and runs up the train tracks with a few jumps to avoid having to run the entirety of the tracks. That's followed up with quite a bit of simple platforming, and then a not-so-simple thin pipe. Sprinting can be very risky here, so he just opts for the jog. There's a bed that awaits him on the other side, and this set of bed jumps is the first somewhat large time save of the run. The factory is quite short and leads to another simple pair of bed jumps to skip a bit of platforming through this mini Wild West area. Now, here's something that you might not be familiar with if you didn't watch these runs during the humble beginnings. Yan Yi climbs up the trains here and runs over to a drone platform hidden under these wooden slopes. I personally never knew about this, but it takes you directly to the top of the wind turbine. With some careful and quick jumps, he makes his way to the next 3 beds, which is one of the biggest set of bed jump skips in the city. This first bed takes him up to the road, leading to some of the most annoying platforming in the area. But this next bed takes you to the roof of the building next to it, which has a bed that launches you high enough to skip all of that annoying platforming and reach the crumbling road. It is a huge time save, and all Yan Yi needs to do now is not fall off of these floating cars to reach the next skip. Here we see the first trampoline in the run, and it's going to take Yan Yi to the thin track above. At the end of that track, there's another bed that takes him straight to the elevator, which leads to the last section of the city. A bit more platforming on mommy and daddy's credit cards, and your boss's bougie office, and it's the last bed of the area. The bed launches you to almost the top of the tower, which skips quite a bit of platforming. An elevator awaits at the top of that tower, and with that, the city is finished. This is where most people celebrate that little victory, making it as far as they did. But for speedrunners, oh gosh, so much more awaits. The heavens. Not sure about you, but this is one of my favorite areas of the game, not just to play, but to watch. It begins with some marble staircases and statue hands, and big apples. Then a running section along a very long snake skeleton. After the skeleton, there's a tiny bit of platforming that leads to a quick bed shortcut, which launches you to a book, maybe the Bible, that sends you to Jesus. As in like a statue of Jesus. And then his right hand comes off, and Yan Yi rides it all the way to where the real challenge of the heavens begins. After getting a free ride from Jesus, Yan Yi is going to take the next bed to the library in the sky, and then carefully climb the books to reach the planet section. It's got like this big moving set of rings, and like these weird objects that you gotta jump over and avoid the rings, and I mean, you get the drill. Now, funny thing about this, the rings here don't even have collision, so you can just run around the whole ring instead of doing the intended difficult platforming around the planets. I think this is pretty funny. So these chess pieces, they're pretty easily climbable, and it's onwards to the biggest skip of the area, Waifu Skip. The bed here sends you soaring, and it can be hard to control the landing without slow-mo. Yan Yi doesn't get the best launch, but does successfully hit the skip without falling down to the bottom of the waifu. Once at the top, you can run all the way to the edge of this transparent blanket thing, and either land on the hat or the cork. Yan Yi opts for the hat, as getting all the way to the cork requires a much more precise jump. And with that, the heavens is complete, and we ride the ship in a bottle to the next area. The Mythos. This area is chock full of references and interesting themes, but we won't be seeing a whole lot of it because there are some big shortcuts here. The first one is at the top of all of these staircases, where you get launched by a cannon. This is intended, but if it's your first playthrough, you probably land on the snowy area. Speedrunners do not. They aim for the icy platform above, which can be reached with the proper directional inputs. The reason for this is that there is a champagne bottle that serves as a secret launcher on this icy platform, and its intended use is for players to reach the culture-filled area above the snowy one. But instead of that, Yan Yi makes sure to run off of the champagne bottle before the launch initiates, in order to send himself towards the left side of this area. The reason for this is that there is a secret bed here that takes you all the way to the whale. Yan Yi was able to nail all of these launches with pretty minimal time loss, run across that rainbow bridge without falling to that death trap next to the pizzas, and finish the Mythos area in about 4 minutes. This is all thanks to some of the biggest intended launch skips in the entire game. Let's move onwards to the second to last area of the game. The Beanstalk. At this stage of the run, tampering with the dragon was not yet incorporated. A lot of you probably know that the dragon is an important part of the run, but in the humble beginnings, it was not used. So it's all quick but careful platforming from here on out. The performance here was not perfect, but this is still the early stages of the game's run, and you have to give credit where credit is due. It was still pretty clean. After the Beanstalk is complete, we reach the very last area, Space. In Space, all you need to do is complete a set of launcher jumps. But don't let the simplicity fool you. These aren't hard, but it's easy to crack under pressure when you're at the very end of a new personal best. He successfully hits all of the launches without falling, and with that, he ends the run with a 30-52. This back-to-back showcase from Yan Yi is truly what kickstarted this all, so I'd like to take a moment to thank them. Even though you had no idea what impact you would have on the gaming scene when doing this, I certainly hope that you and everyone else watching now knows. So thank you, and put some respect on it, people. Now that the game has been broken down a bit for you, just look at the 2 weeks of progression after that run. As you can see, a lot of progress was made in such a short time, and the community was booming with new runners. Before I bring you to the current run and route, let me just explain what an insane domino effect that this game had on the content creation world, and how speedrunning, despite still being quite niche, can kickstart truly amazing things in the gaming community. Thanks to the hundreds of thousands of eyes on the speedrunning community of Only Up, this started the period of time in the game's history where viewership on Twitch and YouTube would skyrocket to peaks that indie developers rarely ever see. Between the 7th and the 21st of June, Twitch viewership and channel amount went from a peak of 90,000 viewers across 60 channels, all the way to a whopping 279,000 viewers across almost 700 channels, all in a 12-day span. Despite the first week being a bit slow, the game averaged 45,000 viewers in the month of June on Twitch, and serves as the most popular game in its niche genre, far above Getting Over It and Jump King. As for the YouTube side, well, I scrolled for quite a while calculating all of the views that were accumulated in June before the 21st, and it was over 30 million. And that is without shorts. That is just wild. Even with the most popular names in streaming and YouTube contributing, I mean, it was the accumulation of so many people stepping up to the plate, determined to not only beat the game, but learn a thing or two from the speedrunners who kickstarted it all. Learning about the various beds they missed, how to get the proper launches off of them, what sections they can make easier for themselves with the proper jumps and climbs, and even attempting advanced methods of certain skips. Creators that you would never imagine giving it their all to beat such a silly game were going all in.
4, 3, 2, 1, let's go!
During the early stages of the game's hype, Kamito, a professional league player, set up a race between some fellow French players, Niski, Taiki Jr., Mikalo, and W Radion. A fun example of creators coming together to take on the game, and served as a huge push for the game trending in the French community. Following that, there were some pretty big content creators picking it up across the platforms, such as Moist Critical, Ludwig, XQC, Kai Senate, Moon, FPS Shaka, Pokimane, the OTK crew, and a ton of big VTubers, and so on and so forth. I mean, the list goes on and on, but I'd like to point out that a lot of them were having a genuinely good time watching each other improve and fail. There were friendly battles amongst each other, including Doug calling out Ludwig, Grand Pooh Bear, Squeak, Smallant, Nandre, and Sandwich in his stream titles. Some of these names aren't even necessarily people who you think of when it comes to speedrunning, or even a speedrunning competition, especially for a janky indie 3D platformer like this. But, you know, that's simply the power that this game had over everyone. There were even big bets between creators on who would finish it before one another, with one between Kai and Phantom for $10,000, dude. 10,000! You really can't make this stuff up. It's a surprisingly positive atmosphere surrounding a game that many would consider a bit toxic. It may be a jank mess of an asset mountain, but it has a charm to it that has swiftly taken the internet by storm.
Oh my gosh.
You're going to space. Welcome to being an astronaut. You, me, and Foolish. We've all made it.
But let's move on and get into, well, this.
Holy shit!
During the tail end of this 2-week phenomenon, my good friend Distortion2 decides to finally play the game himself. If you don't know who Distortion2 is, he is one of the most prolific speedrunners with a long list of games and accomplishments dating back to early 2014. Here are a few games he's contributed discoveries and routing to, as well as even achieving world records in. Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, Shadow of the Colossus, Little Nightmares, Doom Eternal, Welcome to the Game 2, Death Stranding, BioShock Infinite, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Elden Ring, and most relevant to this video, Getting Over It. There are many more, but I think you get the point. He's kinda goated. While there was already a very active speedrunning community, taking the game to new heights, Dist's late arrival to the scene was not overlooked. He may have only just achieved a sub 30, while the others were grinding towards sub 20. but he dedicated 10+ hour streams to improve as quickly as he could. It only took him 3 days to go from a 31 to a 21, effectively putting him 10 seconds away from the world record at that time. Over the course of those few days, there was so much experimentation with launching taking priority, as new methods were found that would cut minutes off of the best possible times. Once those were implemented, it was clear proof that there was more to be discovered about launching methods and the physics behind them. From June 21st to June 30th, big new developments were made that allowed runners to not only push for sub 20, but to push for sub 19. Dist did a lot of work on this run and has continued to strive for world record after world record alongside the other runners. Allow me to take you through his current personal best, which is exactly 1 month after Yan Yi's run that I covered earlier. 1 month of community effort and hard work, and the swift evolution of this game's speedrunning potential. All in this run. Before I get into that, here are a list of honorable runners who put in just as much work and achieved amazing things in this game's legacy. All of which do not go by the name Cloudy, because that dude is just splicing runs and getting clout on YouTube. He just deletes all the comments calling him out. It's pretty bad. Don't defend him. It's not lag, it's not the game being weird, he's splicing his runs, like legit. He got banned, like... okay, anyways. Here are a list of very talented runners who don't cheat. Now then, let's get into Dist's run so I can explain all of the new discoveries and just how much of an impact they had. Right off the bat, rerouting has been done to skip the elevator at the beginning. With some precise jumps and climbs, Dist ascends the structure here to get to the stairs going to the pipes at roughly 39 to 40 seconds. It doesn't save much time, so it's definitely an advanced method of starting the run. As you can see here, jumps and movement on the pipes is much faster and much more precise. The bed behind the platform is also used to cut some time getting to the train tracks. From here, it's Peepa running all the way to the next platforming section where movement and jumps have been highly optimized. It may not seem like much, but these small differences in movement and positioning between Yan Yi's run a month ago and now, it's, well, absolutely huge in the long run. The same succession of bed jumps is used to reach the platforms leading to the factory, but without unnecessary climbing animations and even a very small shortcut in the factory itself. This leads to the beds in the mini Wild West area that launched Dist towards the first advanced skip in the run. Advanced skips are essentially using the game's intended skips, but in unintended ways. Here, there's a drone platform that takes you around the area a bit, but ultimately leads to nothing big. Although, if you jump off of the platform and aim for the rock with the wind turbine on it, there is a secret bed. First iterations of this advanced skip would use this bed to reach the rotor blades on the turbine, which can effectively launch you upwards with more momentum. This was cut out entirely with the current advanced method, skipping the bed entirely. By stepping on the drone platform at the right time, you can then time a jump to land directly on the rotor blade of the turbine, activating a climbing animation on it and then jumping off of it. This achieves the same momentum, but without the need to use the bed for the setup. If performed correctly, it takes you all the way to the next bed launch, which has also been slightly altered. By performing a roll before landing on this bed, you can reset your directional momentum to get straight to the next set of beds. These beds have not changed, and Dist goes straight up to the crumbling highway. car jumps here have been optimized as much as one possibly can, so apart from highly skilled play, nothing has changed here really. Until the new trampoline skip. From what I can tell, this is one of the hardest advanced skips in the run so far. From what you've seen in Yanni's run earlier, this trampoline is used to reach the track above, which then has a bed at the end of it leading to the elevator. What you see here is Dist specifically angling himself after the jump to land on the trampoline facing in the direction of the elevator. After flying up into the air, he directs himself towards the tree behind him, in order to gain forward momentum off of this branch. By gaining that forward momentum and landing on the edge of the trampoline, he has just enough height and speed to reach the tables before the elevator. Easy to understand, but I assure you it is very hard to execute this. The landing wasn't perfect, and Dist had to climb the chair, but this certainly saved a good chunk of time. After the elevator ride, the platforming is practically the same, but this next skip is not even remotely the same. We have yet another advanced skip, which now serves as the biggest skip in the city. As we saw earlier, this bed takes you to the tower, but that's not what Dist is doing here. Dist is going to jump on the bed, stop forward momentum, and use slow-mo to line himself up with the very edge of the bed. If performed correctly, that specific spot will angle that momentum instead of sending him straight upwards. That momentum is so powerful, he can launch all the way to the hot air balloon in the distance, which conveniently has a trampoline on the top of it. By performing a roll mid-air to reset his momentum, Dist can land directly on that trampoline, and is launched all the way to the top of the elevator that leads to the heavens. I think everyone can agree that this is one of the coolest skips in the run. A lot of the platforming here at the beginning of the heavens hasn't changed, but you can clearly see in sections like this one that the level of execution is extremely high. More precise movements, and a better understanding of how to make the most out of those risky jumps. Something important to observe is how Waifu Skip is performed this time around. A proper setup was discovered in order to consistently be sent to her arm, instead of any of the random objects around her. This allows Dist to get straight to running through the transparent blanket and performing the cork jump, instead of landing on the hat. As stated earlier, this jump is much more risky, but saving every bit of time is what Dist is striving for. A nice break here on the ship gives time for a stretch and some water, and then it's time for the mythos. Nothing has changed about the cannon at the top of the staircases, but something about that champagne bottle launch certainly has. It was discovered that there is a way of activating 2 launches from the bottle in one jump. By crouch walking forward before the first launch, the game will actually register a second one in the middle of that first launch. The amount of upward momentum that you get from this is enough to send you all the way to the Rainbow Bridge, effectively skipping the beach bed, the whale, and the regular bridge before the rainbow one. For an advanced skip, this one is probably the easiest to perform and really only requires a quick switch to 30 FPS and a little bit of practice. This leads Dist to the final area, the beanstalk. Now, you may hear me say the final area and think, wait Maxi, isn't the final area space? No. No, watch this.
fucking go, baby! Oh yeah! Woohoo! It's not sub 19, but hey, that's pretty good! That's pretty good!
Let me explain how this works. Entering the maze-like platform section, Dist heads to the right side to reach a platform that has a mini launcher on it. If the timing is right, this allows for a clean landing on top of the dragon. From here, a lot of practice is needed to understand how each step is performed. The wing positioning here is crucial for you to time your forward jump, and the timing of the jump should allow you to land on the wing, but being able to jog on to the edge of it without falling or being shifted around will take some getting used to. If those two steps are done correctly, you should be in position for the wing to launch you upward. But there's still a bit more to it. If you actually get the launch upward, you need to make sure that you roll in order to reset momentum and not be flung too far away from the ending platform. It's all very tricky, and definitely serves as one of the hardest things to perform in the entire run. But it's definitely worth getting the hang of because it saves so much time. And with that, he, as well as many others, are pushing for the sub 19 as I make this video and as all of you are watching it. In just about 5 weeks from release, this game went from almost 50 minutes to 19. To some, this achievement may seem normal. Let me tell you that this is anything but normal. It's common to see popular new titles get optimized and labbed out pretty quickly by large communities, as I've shown off in my recent Resident Evil 4 remake video. But for a game like this to blow up as much as it did, and have speedrunners unknowingly be the masterminds behind it, it is an anomaly. As mentioned at the beginning of this, getting over it was truly where interest in these types of games started, but this is the first time we've seen this type of game gain so much traction across the globe, and have so many eyes on speedrunning because of it. It's actually the reason I wanted to make this video. I feel as if not enough people truly understand how rare these moments are for the speedrunning community. When you think of games like Elden Ring or Resident Evil 4 Remake, there's already such a large established audience for these games, all anticipating some of the best content of the year. These will clearly have big speedrunning scenes, and tons of eyes watching them. As another example, games like Amnesia the Bunker or Sons of the Forest. Despite not being largely anticipated titles, they are still recognized as sequels or additions to already established games. Those have plenty of activity and views due to being something out of the norm and both also being quite broken. I mean, these are just a handful of examples of games that you can certainly expect a good amount of hype for, but a game like Only Up is a one-off type of title with barely any marketing, strange and unintuitive design paired with super janky platforming mechanics, and very minimal interest on release. These are simply a few out of many factors as to why this game's story is so wildly improbable, let alone knowing that speedrunning is still seen as a niche part of the gaming community. After all of these years, the hobby has grown so much, but it is still widely misunderstood, despite so many amazing creators in the speedrun YouTube scene providing their insight and knowledge. To those of you who have cheered on the speedrun community for years and years, I, as well as many others, can agree that you are fantastic, and we really appreciate all that love and support. To those of you who just got into the speedrunning scene recently, maybe even just thanks to Only Up, I welcome you, and I hope that you dig deep into this scene, because there are a lot of amazing stories to be told. I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown of Only Up's speedrun, and just how important the scene was to giving this game a running start, to then have the biggest names in content creation attach jet engines to it. Thank you so much for not only watching this video, but for supporting these runners and cheering them on during this special time in gaming history. Please subscribe here if you enjoyed this, and make sure to check out some of my other speedrun explanations and documentaries. Much love, and I will see you next time for another thrilling speedrunning story.